Hey, everybody, welcome to Love and Reload, the voice of the relocation industry. And I'm your host, Ben Cross, and I'm so blessed and honored to be here with my friend, Andrew Walker. Andrew is the global leader for total rewards at EY and founder of Elevate to Even Plus, and just an all-around amazing person and industry icon, if I may be so bold as to say that. I can say whatever I want on my show. Andrew, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you, Ben, for having me. Great to be back. It's been a while.
It is great to have you back. It has been. It's been too long. And I always, you're one of those people that when I see you, I always smile and I always learn something. And that is a killer combination. So
Well,
I welcome everybody to the show today. Get in the comments. I want to know who you are, where you are. Give your company a shout out. Check in with us. You know, we're always going to give some shout outs in the beginning, get people warmed up. We're going to be talking about total rewards and mobility, and how does that all work together, or does it? Is there a life after mobility, you know? And what has Andrew been up to? He's got some incredible philanthropic interests going on with the 11 plus and upward mobility. You may have heard some of these things, so we're going to talk about how you can get involved and what all is going on there. And EY's got some cool things cooking. You may have seen in the news as well. So we're gonna, see if Andrew gives us a little insight on that, see what he's, at liberty to, share around that. So we're gonna be cooking with some stuff here. And Andrew, should we give some shout outs? Andrew, see who's checking in with us.
Sure, let's do it.
All right, let's see. We got Jana Chazanowski checking in from Brazil. What's up, Jana? Scott Chapman, Chappie. Andrew is great. I concur. Dana Whitman, looking forward to this. Andrew. Thanks, Andrew. Yes. Mike Falia checking in from Southern California. Doris. Hey, love you, Doris. Appreciate you. I love the love, Andrew. Isn't that one of the coolest things about our industry?
It is. There's a lot of love.
There's a lot of love. You're in total rewards now. And it seems like there should be a lot of love in total rewards. Is there love? Is there a lot of love? Or is it more selfish? It's like, what's in it for me?
It's a different kind of love. It's definitely different. There's such a sense of community in the mobility industry, and I think I could talk more about this later, but what mobility professionals, the scope, the breadth of what mobility professionals deal with day in and day out is very different, and that I think that creates a different feel in our unique industry, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking to Lynn Shotwell over dinner, and I was like, Lynn, are we weird? Is every industry like this when you go to a conference and everybody's hugging and it's like old friends and whatever? Like, are we normal, or is this like, are we different? She said, no, y'all are different. Y'all are different. Indeed. Adrian checking in, Global Headquarters checking in, sunny, beautiful Dallas. Oh, it's a gorgeous day. Spring has sprung. Where in the world are you, Andrew?
I am in, I like to call Dirty Jersey, but
Dirty Jersey in the house.
Beautiful New Jersey, just outside of New York City.
That's
and
great.
It was stunning, but it just got very cloudy. But it's warm here today.
Dirty Jersey. This might be the first Dirty Jersey drop we had on Love and Reload. It's a good thing we had Andrew back on. So much work had yet to be done. Mary Lee, sunny and finally warm Minnesota. Yes, thaw out, Mary Lee. And Tyler checking in from Dallas also. What's up, Tyler? Chappie. Nice. John checking in from Philly. What's up, John? I didn't know you were in Philly. That's cool. Over at Fluency. Rhiannon. Also at Glomo HQ. Love it. Doug Gallardo checking in. Very cool. Vinny, another industry icon and great. Looking forward to a great show. Cheers from the road. Heading to Seattle for the Atlas Forum. Andrew is one of the best. Vinny has the best house parties in global mobility, hands down. Is that an award we can give?
I think if you say is the best, that would be Vinny.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Like, it's not even like there's finalists. It's like where you just give the award. It's like one of those lifetime achievement awards. It's not like we're going to have 5 people up here and just
every year, a lifetime achievement award every year. Yeah. I was thinking about Vinny earlier today, just thinking when I first met him, it was in Denver about 10 years ago. And I remember he was still kind of a young buck at the time. And the impression he gave right there and then was like, this kid's going places. And look at him now.
Was he at Grable then or at Trimble then? Do you remember?
I think it was Trimble. It wasn't Grable at that point.
It wasn't? Okay, cool.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Isn't it cool too how you know people over time and you could watch people grow in their role
Really
and as
cool.
people?
Yeah. That's one of the best things for sure.
You know, you've Adam checking in, talking about growth, you've grown a lot. I want to talk about your career path real quick and get in the comments. If you got questions for Andrew, you want to know, what he's up to, or you got questions about some of the, philanthropic things he's doing. We're going to talk about internships. If you want to talk about any of that, get in the comments and we'll try to prioritize the questions from the audience. But Andrew, your career has grown quite a bit and it's evolved. And, when I met you, I think, I mean, you were Global Mobility at the
Yep.
time at EY. How has your journey evolved? What's that been like for you?
Yeah. So it's funny that we'll talk about this, but I officially left mobility as a day job 2 years ago. And at that time, I was asked a year before I left to do what I've done, and I didn't want to. And I just thought, I can't leave this field that I've spent my whole career in. And I felt like I've done a lot, not everything, but a lot that there is to do in mobility. So it wasn't as much about the professional challenge as it was just loving the industry and the people, knowing people for years. I
Yeah.
started as an intern in college in 1987, revealing my age
What?
before most
I didn't
people
know
were
that.
born.
1987 as an
Yeah,
intern.
yeah, yeah. And there are people that I worked with that first summer as an intern that are still in the industry that I still see.
Should we
So
make people feel really old and just start naming names?
I
No,
can
we don't
name
have
a
to do
couple of them.
that.
They're really great people, lots of great people. There's just so many great people in the industry. So when my boss said, I was double dipping for a while. I was managing, and at EY, mobility is not nested within Total Reward. It is its own standalone function, and I was leading both functions simultaneously. And as the Total Reward agenda became much more critical globally, I was spending more and more time in Total Reward, and my boss said, "Look, we really need you to focus there 100%." And it took me a year to finally see that it was inevitable, and I had to do that. But yeah, I started as an intern. I spent my I was between my sophomore and junior year, I worked for what was then Merrill Lynch Relocation, which became Prudential, which became BGRS, which became what it is now. But probably some other iterations along the way. But anyways, I did a semester abroad, and I was caught the international bug, and I also had the mobility bug because I remember this was when international calls, you had to go to the center in the center of the city and wait in a long queue to be able to make an international call. And I did that
Wow.
to talk to my former coworkers from the prior summer at Merrill Lynch Relocation. So, and they passed the phone around, and I got caught up with everybody. But that sort of gelled this international experience with my love of mobility. So when I graduated from college, I was looking for a job. I was just networking, called the guy I worked for, Dave Halleck, who was my first boss and somebody I still talk to on a increasingly regular basis. And he said, "Well, actually, I'm hiring, and why don't you come in and interview?" And so I got into client relations. Was my first job. Absolutely loved it. One of my favorite jobs in mobility. But due to a restructuring, I became a domestic home sale counselor, which was not my skill set. Not at all my skill set.
Well, yeah,
And
I
I
was
was
gonna say because at first it sounded like you skipped the cons- you got me, Andrew? Okay.
Yeah, you
So
froze for a sec, but
if I froze
yep,
for
go
a
ahead.
second, yeah, we're getting a lot of people on the Wi-Fi, Andrew. A lot of people. No, but I was gonna say it sounded like at first you skipped the consultant role, which is kind of that kind of cornerstone role within relocation and mobility, and you got to do the client facing stuff, which is kind of
Yeah.
the fun stuff.
Yes.
But then it
Yeah.
sounded like, but then you had to kind of take maybe a half step backwards and kind of get some that experience due to just economic
Yes,
situation.
yeah, I did. I mean, it was just a strategic decision that they merged client relations and operations, and so I became a domestic home sale counselor, and I was terrible at it, and I was a nervous wreck. I remember talking to people about the, the single largest investment they had in their life,
Yeah.
and I was, doing it for like 6 months, and I was still reading the script, and I knew I was done for when one of my transferees just said, "Are you reading? It sounds like you're reading." Okay, it's that obvious that
It
I'm
sounds like
terrible
you're
at
in your
this.
early 20s and reading
I
a
was, yeah.
script about the largest investment in my
Yeah.
lifetime.
Yeah, exactly right. So, but I had this passion for international, and I kept talking to the people that worked on the international side of the fence. And the first opportunity I had was to go on site at a client's facility as an implant. I was actually doing one of their jobs, and it was at the time sort of fashionable to outsource people, but have them doing your jobs that their former colleagues were doing for them. So I went to JP Morgan and got introduced to international mobility there, and just
Wow.
absolutely fell for it, loved it,
Wow.
and just followed that. And I pivoted from being a on the client on the provider side to switching over to the client side, because I wanted to sort of taste that for a while, and that created a whole nother career for me to actually run mobility programs for some pretty big companies. So it's been a really great journey. Gotten so much out of it for sure.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that career, because that jump that you made from the provider side to the corporate side is probably the biggest requested jump that we get as a recruitment firm of people who are looking to make that jump. So I'm really curious, what types of advice you would give to people to navigate that. Also, want to check in before we get to that. I want to check in with people here who are checking in with us. We got people checking in. Janet Turner, good afternoon. Janet saying, not sure if you're live on LinkedIn. If you can see us on LinkedIn, would you please get in there and check in and let us know? Am I crazy? Is Janet crazy? Both? Like, what's going on? We're doing a sanity check here real quick. It could be both. Both is actually the correct answer. Christine is checking in from Puebla while working on some, I think it's exciting programs for women of global mobility. That's super cool. Shout out to Christina. Also, shout out to Rhiannon, who I think on my team is working with her on that as well. People are saying, yes, we're live. It's working. Okay. Jill's checking in from Connecticut. Thank you. Awesome. Vinny's appreciating the love. Means a lot coming from you. That's so cool too. Just sidebar, y'all. I mean, giving people compliments and telling them why they're amazing and believing in people is probably the best thing you can do for someone. It's free. It takes no time at all. And it could change someone's day, it could change their life. So just recognize people in your life for what makes them absolutely amazing. That's what I love about you too, Andrew. Got a great heart, man. People are checking in. My daughter works for EY, Karen says. Aaron's checking in from Kansas City. What's up? Yes, we're live. That's cool. How did you make that? I want to talk about internships. I want to talk about opportunities. I want to talk about EY. I want to talk about everything. Get in the comments with your questions for Andrew. We will take them all. But Andrew, how did you make that leap? What advice would you give to people wanting to make that leap from the supplier side, RMC side, fill in the blank, over to the corporate side in a global mobility function?
Yeah. I think you just have to put yourself out there, honestly. And networking is so critically important. At the time, I was living in Connecticut, and I wanted to move to the West Coast. And I was I was cold calling the heads of mobility at a bunch of companies out there. And I remember having a lot of the conversations with Apple. They wanted somebody to run immigration for them full time. And I thought, God, I'd love to live out there. And I don't know that much about immigration yet, but I bet I could do the job. And she sort of said, "Look, I don't think you're quite right for that." So but
What?
it's like you have to. I'm not going to say who she is, but she's an industry legend as well, now retired. But and our paths continued to cross in the years following. But it was the right outcome. But the point I'm trying to make is I just kept reaching out to different people, but it was ultimately a fluke. So talking about West Coast companies, I was going to a training program to be certified in the Overseas Assignment Inventory, which is a cross-cultural adaptability assessment tool. And there were 4 people in this program, including me. 2 of them were from this company called the Principal Financial Group, which I hadn't heard of before, headquartered in Des Moines, Iowa. And we just had an amazing time in this little mini training session. It was over 2 or 3 days. And after one evening, we're having dinner, and they just said, "Would you ever think of moving to Iowa?" And I said,
And what'd you
"Where
say
is
to that?
Iowa?" I said,
Where?
"I was game. I was game." And they said, "Well, let's interview you." So I, interviewed with the president of the international division and really liked him. And they were making a huge investment in their international growth, and they were really committed to doing it right. And they needed somebody who knew what I knew with the amount of experience I had at that point, which was about 5+ years. And so they said, what would it take for you to move here? I said, well, I need to see it. So can I come out and visit? And they flew me out, and I had an amazing time. And I worked there, they hired me, and I worked there for a couple of years. One of the best experiences of my life, getting out of my
That
comfort
is
zone,
so cool.
going to some part of the country I didn't know anything about. And some of my best friends, in fact, I just saw in February a guy I worked with there who I considered like a brother to me. I just, great, great people. Career highlight
That is
for
so
sure.
cool to hear you say that. I mean, my career took off also when I took the first assignment, right? When I took that first relocation package. And I love the fact that you moved to Iowa and you're saying what a great experience it is, because I feel like one of the issues that our industry has to battle, and one of the things I see with, as in the talent acquisition business, is such a reluctance to move to certain parts of the country. And it feels to me to be a growing reluctance. And you could say it's based on political polarization. You could say it's based on just, some cultural, some possibly misinformation. I mean, but what would you say to encourage someone who's considering an assignment in an Iowa or a non-traditionally exciting market for someone, maybe? And I mean, I hate to even paint that, because Iowans are probably sitting there like, what are you talking about, Ben? Love it here, but I mean, what would you say to people? How can we encourage people to take that leap? um for me, I moved to Texas from New York right out of college, and my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, came with me. And halfway down, we were driving. Halfway down, she started crying because she thought I was taking her to Little House on the Prairie to churn butter and make her own dresses, and things like that. But I mean, once we got to Dallas, she realized, oh wait, this is a big city, lots of opportunities, really cool. Actually, we could afford a nice home here. But what do you say to people to encourage them? How do we change that mindset?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I will say there's been a lot written over the last, oh gosh, no, probably 5 years or so about the increasing immobility of the American people. And there's so many reasons for that. So it doesn't surprise me that people in our industry would have a similar reluctance. Um, but I think first of all, you have to have a growth mindset. If you're not
Mm,
willing to sort of expand your perspective and put yourself out there, then it probably is not going to happen. So you have to almost take that for granted. You have to be somebody who's prepared to do that. But the other side of it is, and the other one that I say all the time is, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. So you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and look for opportunities to be uncomfortable, because you'll be better for it in the long run. And then the third piece is the long run. Is the success of a career journey is not a straight line, and you have to do different things at different times in your career. And the very worn out adage, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so sometimes you have to kind of go in a slightly different direction, whether that's the job you're doing, whether you think that's a lateral move. Oh, why would I make a lateral move? I want to just move up. And I had some times in my career where I said no thank you to a lateral move, and kind of regretted it later. So that's coming from my own experience. um, but it's just be prepared to, or look for those opportunities to grow. And you'll be absolutely astonished by what you learn, and when you look back on yourself and how you've grown as a person as a result, it's pretty cool.
I'm going to challenge. I'm going to challenge because I want to hear this. You mentioned lateral moves, right? And we're in recruitment, but also in and just in business in general. Why would somebody take a lateral move? You're right. Everybody wants kind of that shortcut to the top, that kind of new title, new pay scale, whatever. What's the point of taking a lateral
So,
move?
so I will say this. So back to that moving to Iowa story. When my hiring manager asked me what I was earning, her reaction was, "Oh, okay, I think we can deal with that." And that my assumption was, I was moving from Connecticut, very high cost, to Iowa, low cost, but I expected my salary to be the same. And when the offer came through, it was less. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, is this a mistake? Why are you offering me less money? But yeah, it's like, and they said, "Oh, but you don't realize, like, this is actually a giant raise for you once you get out here." And it well and truly was. But I had to get my head around the idea of taking that financial, seemingly backward step. It turned out it wasn't. Um, and but what that did was a couple of things. One, I did get raises pretty quickly to surpass what I was earning in the job I left. But I was getting experiences that I could not possibly have had if I was staying where I was. And in this case, it was financially, it was called a lateral move. Career wise, it was definitely different, and there was enough new and exciting about it. But the answer to your question, Ben, is if you want to get ahead, the best way to do that is to find out what you're missing. And sometimes you have to move sideways to get that extra piece, what you're missing, in order to take that giant step forward later. And if you're
So
waiting
you're feeling,
around,
so if I can paraphrase, like, so you're saying, like, maybe fill those skill gaps and be
yeah,
exposed to different networks.
yeah,
Is that fair?
exactly right.
Okay. That's, yeah, super interesting because I think that's really good counsel, right? And you say it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And I think sometimes we sprint to the next raise and we sprint to the next station in life, and we don't realize that the importance of making the correct move. Because if you sprint to that spot and it's not the right spot, it could be a career cul-de-sac or worse,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, and
And
the fit is so incredibly important. And if you, a lot of people, we're getting into giving career advice, which I shouldn't do, but a lot of people go to a new job because they're leaving the job they have, not because of the opportunity or the people that they're going to work for. And
dude, you
there's,
ain't lying.
there's all this like pandemic remorse now of people who left, and just reading the headlines, how the high percentage of people who regret making that move. You just have to look at, there's so much more to consider than just either I don't like my boss, I need a new job. And believe me, there have been times in my career I've thought that. I'm sure there are people who've worked for me who have thought that, and that's okay. That's part of the normal boss subordinate relationship. But yeah, you have to really be much more measured and intentional about the moves you make, for sure.
I love that. I love it. You really need to be running. I say you need to be running to a job, not running away from a situation,
Yeah,
right? Because my father-in-law told me this. He said, because no matter where you go, there you are, right? So if the problems were intrinsic at the place you left, if they were inside you, then you're going to take those same issues and those same gaps to the
yeah,
next place, right? So you got to solve that and make sure
yeah.
that you're really changing what needs to be changed. Um, this is really great. Christina saying career cul-de-sac. She likes it. Yes, it's cool. I'm happy you like that one. That's great. I like that one too. Jana saying, shouting out to Christina, the Glomo ladies, and all, and I stand corrected, by the way, all of our ladies on our team, Jana, Jill, and Rhiannon are all participating in the Women of Global Mobility, which is a really cool project. Encourage everybody to check that out and follow that. By the way, actually, Christina, if you want to, or anybody on my team want to put a link to that, please put it in there in the comments so people can go check that out. Mary Lee saying networking is so important, but also on the supplier side, do not get so siloed. Make sure you're getting diverse skill sets that allow the transfer to a corporate mobility type role. Be open to relocation for a role. It will pay off. Mary Lee, what a great point. What do you think about that piece of advice, Andrew?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Yeah, and it's, I mean, having started my career on that side, I did. I was fortunate. And sometimes I didn't think I was fortunate. Like I loved my client relations job and that went away and was doing domestic home sale, which I was terrible at. But I learned so much from that. And I learned, what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, which is sometimes just as important. But yeah, you need a variety of experiences. And if you can't, a lot of people have said, well, I want to, how can I be more? This is going back a ways, but I want to be more strategic. How can I be more strategic? And you can't, nobody's going to hand you that your strategic wand. It's in you to demonstrate that you can think that way. And so if you feel like you're in a rut and you want more experiences, find opportunities to get involved in projects or just go have a networking lunch with somebody in another area just to learn about what they're doing. I mean, there's lots of ways you can get at that, but it is critically important. And the other thing too, having been on both sides of the fence, and it's hard on both sides of the fence, but it's a different kind of hard. Having so being on the supplier side, having clients and transferees or international assignees who are really demanding and expect so much more of you than they might of someone else because you are a service provider is hard. And they also don't treat you very well sometimes. Like when they find out that, oh, you don't work for my company, I don't have to be nice to you. That's
You're
brutal.
just a vendor,
You're
right?
just a
Yeah.
vendor. Yeah, that's and so I totally get that. And whenever I hire a service providing firm, I think of all those people as an extension of my team, just because I know how bad it is. But that's part that comes with the territory, and clients just having unrealistic expectations and making unrealistic demands. So that's side. On the other side of it, you can establish longer term relationships with people who know you and have more faith in you. But the downside is you're always with them all the time. So you don't say, "Oh, I moved that assignee and I don't have to deal with them anymore." When you're in house, those people are still working for your company, and you're dealing with them forever.
They can
That's
haunt
just
you. Those
one. Yeah, they can. Yeah, but yeah. So
that's
it's
okay. I'm gonna ask you, I'll put you on the spot here. Andrew, I'm gonna ask you, what's harder? Is it being a supplier or being on the corporate mobility side?
um, it's different. It's different. But I made the move to the client side, and there are aspects of it that make it easier. A couple of things too that I liked. So I worked for a while for Mercer as a consultant, and it was fine, and I did okay at it. I wasn't there long enough to really make a mark, but what I found was when I was an in-house mobility leader, I was the one person in the organization doing my job, and so I had some cachet came with that, some influence. I was in meetings that wouldn't normally have been if I was on the consulting side, which was cool. But I was one of thousands of consultants. I was just a mere cog in a much bigger wheel, and I realized I kind of missed that feeling unique and important. So from that standpoint, that was just something that comes to mind. But no, I think I wouldn't say one's better or worse, honestly, Ben. I think it's you you grow up in a certain environment and you get used to the way it works, and that's just the environment you're in.
Sure.
If you're moving between the two, I think sometimes who don't appreciate that is different can have a harder time either direction they're moving in.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a different question. Which is more difficult, global mobility as a discipline or total rewards? Because now
Um,
you have the unique
yeah,
experience to have done both. Not many
yeah.
people in our space have. What's more
I would
difficult
say,
area?
I will say it's easy answer for me. It's mobility is more difficult.
Wow, really?
The
Why?
main Well, the main reason is mobility is far more emotive, and you're dealing with so much more complexity and so much more variability day in and day out, unpredictability. And we're dealing with not just the employee, but their family if they have a family that's moving. And that is such a opportunity and it's such a great experience, but it can also present so many more challenges, as we all know in the field. Whereas in reward, the challenges tend to be more either academic or financial. It's okay, we need to be able to do this, but we don't have the money. How do we cross that bridge without the funding? Is there a creative solution? We don't even in Reward talk to the employees. The HR generalist community talk to the employees about their pay. So from that standpoint, there's so much less emotion. Now there's emotion in any job, but it's just the dynamic of work. It's not that inherent to the position that we have. So yeah, I would
Yeah.
say pretty quickly it's mobility.
Yeah. The cry factor is a lot bigger in the mobility side than it is in it's
Yeah.
like
Now,
and yeah.
that being said, I have been in reward meetings where people have cried, which is,
Yeah. Right.
I mean, but so there's a downside everywhere, but it's much more available in mobility for sure.
If you're watching this right now, I want you to get in the comments, put your questions, put your thoughts in there. Please, I'd love to hear what you have to say about everything that Andrew's throwing out there. He's throwing out a lot of really cool comparisons. I think it's really interesting. Andrew's in such a unique situation that he's been at kind of the junior level. He's been at the senior level. He's been in managed relocation management. He's been on the corporate side. He's been in-house as a supplier, and then he's also obviously leading total rewards at a mega firm. So really
And then
interesting
I
insight.
was an expat too, so that's another
And
angle.
he's a customer of mobility. So I mean, really touch them all there. And you are the voice of the industry. I think, Andrew, you should
For
get
better
a
or worse.
podcast.
Yeah.
But I want to also ask you, as the comments and questions come in here for you, I want to also ask you though, going back to what you said about how your career started as an intern, which I just think is like the coolest story. And we always talk about how we fell into this, but I think like internship is as probably as intentional as I think you could be so far without a full-fledged degree being offered in mobility yet. But is that internship maybe kind of was that one of the internship experience, one of those kind of seeds of that grew in you to make you want to start your work with upward mobility and with 11 plus
Yeah,
and
there
everything?
was.
I mean, tell us a little bit
Yes,
about that.
indirectly. So, it's. I mean, I have an appreciation for internships for sure, but it was in a quite different conversation that ultimately led to the creation of 11 Plus, which for people who don't know is,
Yeah, tell us
um,
about that.
an, it's a nonprofit. It's 11 Plus is shorthand for Elevate to Even Plus, just because it's easier to say 11 Plus, which is EL is elevate and even is even, and then the plus sign. And so we find and fund internships specifically for students of color from low income backgrounds.
Love it.
And I was having a conversation with someone who was sharing how he was the CEO of a nonprofit, and he was challenged to find interns that were coming from the communities that his organization served. And I thought, wow, there's a great opportunity here to help these students find these opportunities. But also, so many of these internships are unpaid, and the students that really could benefit from this experience the most can't afford to work for free. So there was a big component here to pay for their wages while they take these internships. So we're now a 3-year-old organization that partners with a lot of other organizations to create jobs for internships. They have to be meaningful jobs that create transferable skills and build a sense of confidence that these students often are lacking, so that when it's time for them to enter the full-time workforce, they've got the experiences, they've got the relationships, they have the skills that they need to be more successful. So we partner with these organizations, and then we have two sides of this. There's a nonprofit side. So for the nonprofit partners we work with, we fundraise and then give them grants to pay the wages of the interns. We have a for-profit partnership where we work with companies and they hire the interns and they self-fund the intern wages. And it's actually through that the Upward Mobility Program exists, but which I can get into later. But anyways, to your point, Ben, yeah, I think I don't necessarily think I was always looking for a way to get back involved in internships from a very different perspective, but I do recognize that, I am in many respects the poster child for white privilege. If you look at me, I'm a white, middle-aged, heterosexual male. Um, and I've not faced all of the obstacles that so many other people who aren't me have to face every day. And when I was looking for that internship, I wasn't looking for a mobility job. I was looking for any summer job to give me practical work experience. And so I went to an office park in Norwalk, Connecticut, Merit 7, for those of you who might know it. And I knocked on every door in this office park. The only company hiring summer help was Merrill Lynch Relocation Management, and they hired me as a clerk. But I think now that if I was, and here I was like a preppy white kid in suburban Connecticut looking for a
Yeah.
job, but if I were, honestly, I have to admit this, if I were a black kid going door to
Yeah.
door, I can imagine nobody saying we have jobs to give, and that's just a harsh
Dude, you'd
reality
end
of
up on
where we are.
somebody's Ring doorbell app feed talking about there should be a there's a no solicitor sign in my building.
Yeah,
Call the cops and get them. Like, I mean, literally, that's what happens when you knock on people's doors and you're a person of color versus, you know,
yeah, it's
a
true.
preppy white
Yeah.
boy. I mean, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
So that's when that hit me. I'm like, gosh, it's so important that we're doing what we're doing just to level the playing field for these kids.
I love this. I'm going to stop you just for a second here. Thank you, producer Adam. There, put in the comments the link to 11 plus. So please go check that out. Don't navigate away from the program because we got more information to tell you. But open in a new window or on your phone or something if you're watching this on your computer. But do check that out. Do get involved. Jana's saying, I love the topic. I'm loving that we're talking about it during April, which is Internship Awareness Month. Jana's on point. Look at that.
Yes,
I didn't even
on
put two and two
fire.
together. She's sharp. How can people, so if global mobility professionals are watching this right now, and I love the fact that I love the fact you're so candid, about your privilege. I mean, we're all, I'm the same way, right? I mean, yes, do we have adversity in our life? Sure. But it's nothing compared to the adversity that people of color or other genders or whatever experience, right? So, I love the fact that you're upfront, honest, and transparent about that, and I think that that's the first step in really starting to create equal access to opportunity, which I
Mhm.
think is really the true American dream out there, right? So, how can people, if people are so moved, how can they get involved, Andrew?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of ways, and what I learned too is, I mean, I this still not quite comfortable with it, but the reality is, if you're working in the nonprofit space, you have to get comfortable with asking for money, but you get creative with it. So, of course, donations are always welcome, but we're at the stage now where we're growing so fast, we really need corporate sponsorship. So, if you work for an organization that is oriented towards social causes like this, um, making an introduction to your charitable giving arm of your organization is extraordinarily helpful. If I call these companies directly, they don't want to hear from me. But if somebody on the inside says, let me make an introduction, it gets me a lot further, gets 11 plus a lot further.
You're
So,
so right. You're so right. I was once taught it's not fundraising, it's friend raising, and it's all
yeah.
about making that connection for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. So that's on the funding side. That would be helpful. We're
If
always
I were to donate $1,000, for instance, what would that do? How would that money
uh,
be used?
so that would go over, probably 92% of that would go directly to an intern in the form of their wages for the summer.
Wow.
And so it costs, in round figures, about, well, let's say $4,500 per student per summer for their wages. We pay $17.50 an hour for their work over the summer, with that's determined by their hosting partners, kind of sets the number of hours and hours a day and all of that. We also pay them $100 sign-on bonus when they accept the offer, and that's for a couple reasons. One, we want to get them excited, like, oh my gosh, they're giving me money already. But two, the students that we're hiring don't often have disposable cash. So they need cash in their pocket to even get to work if they have to take public transportation or buy a new shirt, or, if they're going to be virtual, make sure they have the right equipment, a headset or whatever. So we give them $100 up front, and then at the back end they get a completion bonus of a $200. So I haven't figured it out, but if you work that into their hourly rate, we're definitely well above sort of what minimum wage is. But I'm really, really passionate about ensuring that these kids are paid appropriately for the work that they're doing. So the
Yeah.
money goes
Love
to
it.
that. We do have one part-time employee. I don't think she works part-time, but I pay her part-time, who's coordinating a lot of the activity. Without her, none of this work would be possible. So that's where some of the rest of the money goes.
So if companies are hearing this and they want to do more than maybe just donate, I mean, I think donation's great and that's a great start. But say they want to participate in this program and host interns, what
Yep.
is that process like, and how do they
Sure.
get involved? And maybe start with some of the companies that in our space that are already doing this and participating with you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, great. So I mentioned in passing upward mobility. Upward mobility is a subset of what 11 Plus does, but we do it expressly for the mobility industry. It was something that Bob Rosing and I came up with a few years ago. He's the CEO of DwellWorks, and it's trying to address a couple of challenges that our industry faces. One is a lack of an employment pipeline. There are so many jobs that have gone unfilled just because we haven't been able to attract enough candidates. But the other is a pretty clear lack of diversity. Now we do have diversity. I'm not saying there's no diversity in our industry, but I don't believe that we fully reflect the society that we work within. And so
Sure.
we need to bring more diversity in. So we came up with this idea of creating internships within our space. This is also near and dear to my heart due to my start, for students of color. And so we started with a pilot last year. We placed 8 students with 5 companies. I think this year we are lining up, I think 18 or 19 positions. I've got to get the latest count, but there's Ayers, Altair has signed up, Cardis, Dwellworks, Equus, Go Destination Services. I'm just kind of going alphabetically here. Grable is on board, MSS, Plus Relocation, and not only is Plus hosting, but they do one of our education modules in this series. Serva, BGRS, and Synergy and US Bank are also on board. And so we're
Nice.
recruiting
That's
for
an
their
impressive
stuff. Yeah.
roster of companies too. And some of those companies are obviously in our space, but they're also, you know, I mean, like US Bank, right? I mean, they're, they're
Yeah,
all
they're
over the
broader than
US.
that. They're
Yeah.
the internships in the mortgage end of that business, which obviously sits in mobility. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Last year, we actually placed a student with Netflix within their global mobility function. So you don't have to be in the service providing side of the business to host an intern. You can be on the corporate side as well. So if you're interested, to answer your question, if you're interested in doing this, reach out to me, and we can tee you up. It's probably getting a little bit late for this year, honestly, because of where we are and where students are and their sort of timelines to line up their summer jobs. But if the opportunity strikes to get you an intern for the summer, we can do that. Within upward mobility, the employer pays their salary. We require it be not less than $15 an hour, but it's up to each employer in that program to determine what they will pay. And there is an administration fee paid to 11 Plus to administer the program, and that is going directly to offset our operational costs. It's actually our hope is, Ben, to grow this corporate side of our business so that we can start funneling that those admin fees that we collect into supplementing the nonprofit student wages, so that it becomes less fundraising, more of a recurring income stream through that for-profit arm.
Okay, so and that comes with scale, like as you get
Yeah.
larger. Okay.
Yes, exactly
Yeah,
right.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think we set in on an informational session for that, and I think we'd like to to try to pull the trigger for that and do that with you. And I think there's some networking that we're going to have to do here locally too, as well, to make sure that
Yeah,
we have
so
the
that so
access to
let me
students
just
here.
point that out. I think that's a good call out, Ben. So with the 11 plus program, we partner with geographically aligned schools and enrichment programs to find the students. So we go to where the students are and recruit them in for our internships. With upward mobility, these jobs can be anywhere in the country, and we don't have established partnerships everywhere. We've done a really good job actually this year of getting a lot more applicants from different places, but sometimes, in some instances, some of our partners have had to go look at their local universities to find students. Go Destination did that last year. They had an awesome intern, but it just creates an extra operational wrinkle. But it's manageable.
Yeah, well, and the good news is once that relationship's built with that university locally, everybody else in that city has access to now that university. So you're like opening up these nodes that everybody else can tap into the next summer or whatever.
Yeah,
so.
and we're in. I'm not going to name the school, but we're in progress discussions with an HBCU that recruits nationally for their students, and so it'd be great if we could get upward mobility using that as one of its anchor schools for sourcing students. Just makes it that much easier, and
Awesome.
getting really great kids.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Wow, super cool. I love this. I think that one of the things I've been super impressed with our industry as a whole, and you're definitely leading the charge there, is how we are going from nobody intended to be in this industry. We all just fell in this industry by accident. It was the only job I could get, to let's be intentional about building a talent pipeline into this industry and start working with universities and start working on curriculums and start working on clubs and start inviting, students to our regional stuff and starting to just kind of starting to network. And I think in the past, the ROI hadn't been obvious to people, but I think as the more we're starting to interface with these young people and people who are globally curious and high empathy and international in nature, I think we're starting to build use cases here and, case study kind of stuff. I mean, I literally just met someone at a university I was on campus at on Thursday. It's an university it's a university that we do global mobility activities with here in Dallas. And I met them, but it was a sales school thing that they were doing. But I met them there. And then there were kids from the global mobility thing that were also in the sales thing. Anyway, I met the student there on Thursday. I introduced him to somebody else on Monday here in my building. And they just made an offer to him today.
Amazing.
And that's the power of connections.
Yeah.
But we have to start reaching out and being in our community. So this is really awesome, Andrew. I love this stuff. We could talk about this for forever, but I want to get into I want to play a couple games. You want to play some games with me? Let's have some fun.
Let's do it.
All
Pickleball.
Right. Yep. Dude, did you see McEnroe versus
Yes,
Agassi
I
versus
did.
Chang?
First of all, yeah, I just saw the McEnroe Agassi match, but that was pretty crazy.
McEnroe Agassi and pickleball was the most underrated thing I'd seen in years from a sports standpoint.
Yeah.
And it was like gold. And you know what? That's a really good intro into our game today. Overrated, underrated. Andrew, you think you can handle that concept?
I think I can.
I think you got it. You know what? I'm going to give you a topic and you're going to tell me, is it overrated or underrated? And then I will tell you if you are correct. And of course, audience, you can play along at home. So please get in the comments and let Andrew know if he's right or wrong, if something is overrated or underrated. The first one up is discomfort.
Definitely underrated.
I'm standing here in my sneakers. Tell me about being discomfort being.
Well, I said earlier, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. So discomfort keeps you sharp. It keeps you learning. It's not a great feeling, but you're better for it in the end. So definitely people should get more comfortable being uncomfortable, discomfort.
I feel like you're describing my pants. If they're not uncomfortable, I'm not growing.
I bet you look great though.
Yeah, well, we'll never know. And that's the beauty of virtual, is that we'll just never know. Oh, I just have to curate this square right here in the world. So we're good. No, I agree. I totally agree. I saw Seinfeld. Seinfeld was the entertainment at SHRM one year. SHRM, great conference if anybody's ever been. And they have top, world-class talent there for the entertainment night. And Jerry Seinfeld was the entertainment that night, Tuesday night at SHRM. And he said, pain is information entering the body. He's like, you pick something up, it's hot, you're like, and now you know something you didn't know before. and discomfort's like kind of a microcosm of that. So.
Yeah.
All right, next one up. Work flexibility.
Yeah, that's very overrated. Now I mean, flexibility is great, but I don't know about a lot of people in the audience today, but I've been working remotely for probably at this point well over half my career. And why do you work remotely? Because you have calls at all hours of the day and night. And so it doesn't make sense. When I first joined EY, I would commute in an hour plus, sit in a windowless office on the phone all day, race home between the little gap that I had to get home in time for the night calls, and then do it at nighttime. And so the flexibility to be able to go to a remote work arrangement was great, but you give a lot for that. And work, it's that the complete overlap of work and life, and you can't separate it. And so this is not, I'm sure a lot of people have, it's occurred to them already, but I kind of missed the days early on when you drove home and you were done. That doesn't happen at all anymore.
So really the question is, do we trade an hour commute each way for the finality of being at home and not having to work? That's a heck of a trade-off, right? The 2 hours of hard cost versus the soft cost of just that warm, cozy feeling of being really able to turn it off.
Yeah. It's a fair question. I think it depends on the day, but I do think that, flexibility was one thing through the pandemic that this came out, and EY just embraced it, and we provided tons of flexibility. But then the noise was, well, I don't have any well-being because I can't separate work from the rest of my life. So
they complain if they're at work, they complain if they're home, Andrew. You give them all the toys. I mean, what else can you do? My cousin works for EY, and she was raving about how well taken care of she was in her home office, and being able to have a home, all the accoutrement, the desks and all the, having a budget for that, and all sorts of stuff. So she felt very taken care of.
Good, glad to hear it.
So I don't know if you take any ownership of that, but that's
can't take much.
Let's see. Richard Majewski saying checking in late. So sorry. Hit that like button, by the way, so people like Richard get the notification that we're live. He says work flexibility seems all polls say staff are more productive at home.
And you know what I should say? I think that's a fair point. I'm not dissing that, and I'm not saying I don't want to go into the office, but the trade-off is, well, we would say, look, if you want to knock off for an hour in the middle of the afternoon to go to the gym, that's great, but you're going to put in the time in another part of your day. And that's where it starts to bleed into your life. But believe me, I'm not asking to commute every day. I just miss the, as you said earlier, that finality of, okay, honey, I'm home, and put your feet up and do whatever you want to do. Whereas now it's, no problem. I'll invite you to a call at 5 a.m. or at 11 p.m, and that happens pretty regularly.
Yeah, that does happen quite a bit, especially in global mobility, where we're, kind of interfacing tri-regionally and, taking calls in Singapore and London and whatever. The other thing, what I think is underrated. This one I'd get crucified for this one. That commute, that like 30-minute. I'm not asking for an hour and a half. My mom did an hour and a half into Manhattan every each way for years down to Wall Street, right? Carried her pumps in her purse, wore sneakers on the train, had 3 modes of transportation. My father-in-law took the ferry from Staten Island. I mean, wild, planes, trains, automobiles, and boats, and I'm not saying I want that, but I don't mind a nice little half-hour drive home. Turn on the radio,
Yeah.
little sports talk, little like decompress. Because if my commute home's like 7 minutes, I hit the door. I haven't got my decompression
Oh,
yet.
totally. Yeah.
And now the
I
Nerf darts are flying at my face. People are biting my ankles. I'm just like,
well,
what
and I would say, like, I was never better informed than when I was a commuter, because I read the paper every day on the way in, and on the way home I read a book, which I don't really do either anymore that much. So there's that too.
Yeah, for sure. Richard's saying, referring to commute, totally agree. I really miss reading time on the tube. Yeah, awesome. Richard checking in from the UK. Very cool. All right, next. Planning and solitude.
That is very much underrated. And
Probably get
so
that on the train.
yeah, you do. But this is a term that I have liberated from Franklin Covey daily planners. If anybody remembers that, that goes back pretty far. Your employer would actually give you a notebook to keep you organized. And the first thing they tell you is every day you should write in your calendar planning in solitude and block out time just to think and reflect and plan. And I don't do that anymore. And I pay the price constantly. You get to your computer, you turn it on, and everything's blowing up, and you jump in. And I think I would be so much better off if I just took a deep breath, relaxed, didn't look at the computer, just thought about what I wanted to accomplish and made a plan. So
I
there.
love that. I really love that. It's just funny how different your brain you can feel it switch when you shut your laptop. When you shut your laptop, when you turn your phone over, you're like you just feel your brain change.
Yeah. Yep.
I totally agree. I love that. Christina saying underrated. I need me some planning time. What's your favorite time to do it? Is it morning? Is it evening? Is it midday? What's the best time?
For me, when I do it, morning is best as a lead up to the day. So to thinking about it, this back to that flexibility comment, so many of my calls now are at 7 a.m. and it's all I can do to get my butt out of bed and get a cup of coffee and get on the call on time, and then your day's
Yes.
away. So I need to rethink that a little bit, but I know for me it's more effective. It always worked pretty well when I did it in the morning before doing anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I like that with coffee time. Yeah, totally. It's just you got to wake up pretty early in the morning nowadays,
Yeah, yeah. And I never go to
especially
bed
around this
early
time.
enough, so that's the problem.
Yeah, it's for sure. Next, 5-year plans.
5-year plans are overrated, way overrated. But it's
Really?
not the
So you
answer
go
you'll
from
think.
planning and solitude being underrated
Yeah,
to 5-year plans. Who needs them?
yeah. So no, but this is what you need. You need a whole life plan.
Oh,
So this is the challenge. So first of all, who knows what's going to happen in 5 years? You can, if somebody asks you, what do you want to do in 5 years? How does anybody really know?
I'd love to hear the
Um,
predictions from 2018. By the way, you know.
yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing. So I've often coached people that I've worked with on sort of what's their next move and where they're going to go next. And it's so hard to answer. I know from personal experience where I knew I needed to do something else, but I didn't know what it was, and nothing really had my attention. But the story changes when you flip it on its head and say, all right, so let's not think about the next year or 5 years or even 10 years, although hopefully for me it's less than that. It's what is the job you're doing when you retire? If you're doing the job that you're absolutely most satisfied with, that you said, I've done what I wanted to do, what is that job? And that is pretty liberating because it gets you less focused on what's next, and it gets you focused on where you want to end up. And back to that, not everything is a vertical line in terms of where you're going with your career. If you think about, like, I want to be a widget maker, and I don't know anything about widgets, but I know I'm not going to get the widget job from where I'm sitting now. So what am I going to do next to get me more ready for that next job? And that way it frees you up to just think very differently about what you should be doing in your life.
I think that's brilliant. What do you want the job to be what do you want your job to be when you retire? I think that's a really great way to rephrase it. I never heard that before, and I like it a lot. Christina says, I hate that. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Who knows? Hopefully not in the same place now. I have a life plan, and I make small steps towards those.
There you go. Yep, that's it.
You know, I heard somebody say once that you overestimate what you can get done in a day, and you underestimate what you can get done in a year. Don't know how that's relevant, but I just want to say.
No, I think that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do the last one here. Personal brand. Ooh.
Oh, so this is getting. I just today saw a headline. It came out of the Harvard Business Review, an article about personal brand. So I'm going to say it's underrated. People need to pay more attention to this. I know I do, and it's not so much what you're putting out there, but it's what people are perceiving of you, and how do you be more conscious of what your
conscientious? No.
Yeah, conscientious. So whatever. I just ruined my brand because I don't know words.
I think words are overrated. Can we say that right now?
So overrated.
Words are now the domain of AI. Let's move on to feelings.
Right. Yeah. Chat GPT can do that.
Yeah, but no,
I think
like
people
that.
need to pay more attention to that. Yeah, and I know I need help in that space. Like just to sort of opine a little more, I think I do a better job of managing down than I do managing up. And I need to figure that out. I need without, sometimes it's, you don't want to be one of these people who's always just working for their, to look good for their boss, but there's an art to managing up. So I need to work on that myself.
Well, it's funny you say that, and I want to hear more about this HBR article, but when I remember reading an HBR article that said senior leader or managers spend 40% of their time managing perception within the organization and what other people think of them. And the inference there was that they're wildly unproductive because they care so much about what other people think inside their organization. Whereas what's interesting about the personal brand is it's inside the organization, as you're kind of using it that way. It's also very obviously on LinkedIn, outside the organization, it's kind of pervasive, it goes, and so I think, this is a really interesting. I was having a conversation with a leader of a company just yesterday, and we were talking about the brand of the company, but I was also talking about the brand of one of their individuals on their team. And there's a question I'm gonna ask you and ask the people here. And they're one of these individuals seemed to have a pretty big and growing brand, and they were doing a lot of stuff. They were active on LinkedIn and such, and sharing a lot of content that was personal, and not like overly personal, but like life experience and how it relates to work and like kind of their identity and stuff like that. I thought it was really good stuff. I was confident. But the question arose, can the personal brand be too big? And is it a bad thing if it is bigger than the brand of the company that they represent? And I wonder what you would say to that.
Yeah, I do think people can have too big a brand for sure. I used to think if I was doing too many conferences, I was saturating my brand, and I needed to stop being on the speaker circuit for a while, because then I was just known as the guy who showed up to talk at conferences. Not that there's anything wrong with that for people who are doing that a lot, but I just was sort of aware that maybe I need to sort of pull back a little bit. And I guess it probably, as everything, it depends, but I would say probably on balance, without knowing too many more of the details, probably better that the employer's brand is known first, that you're supporting the employer brand instead of taking the employer's brand in a different direction, on balance. But I'm sure there are lots of reasons why that wouldn't fly.
Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting conversation, and kind of not a debate, but we just kind of explored it a little bit. My thought, where I kind of landed with it, and I want your opinion on this, is that the brands of the employees of the firm it's like a mosaic, and where each one is a tile, and each tile's different shapes, different sizes, different colors. Some are more vibrant and conspicuous than others. But they all serve to make up the brand of the picture of the firm, and because without them, you wouldn't have a firm either, right? And the firm's brand is a composite of all the lived experience of people who have interacted with that firm, which is really to say not the logo, but maybe the product, but mostly the people, in my experience, at least in a services company.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I look at it like that, because the converse is we subvert the brands of the individuals,
Yeah.
and then how engaging is the firm?
No, I'm totally with you. I think I can relate to that. So I'm hyper conscious of my positioning of 11 plus in my profile above my EY profile, and I'm sort of hyper aware of that, and is that and maybe projecting a little bit that some of my colleagues think that I need to be quieter in the public realm on my involvement with something that isn't focused on EY. So, if anybody, I don't think anybody from EY is on the call, but if you are, let me know what you think on that one, because I see your point. That's why I really struggle with that answer, because everything can be too much. You don't want to be too subservient to your employer brand, but you don't want to be so far out ahead of it that nobody knows who you work for. If you're out very publicly sort of promoting ideas, perhaps.
So I'm gonna say, since you used yourself as an example, I'll comment on that though. Like, part of my affinity for the EY brand is due to my affinity for you. And I think you're an amazing person. I love the work because I love the work you're doing with 11 plus upward mobility, the work you've done on the ERC board, our interactions personally, just as a friend. I just think very highly of you. And therefore EY benefits from that, right? I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah,
anything of your work at EY. I don't know the quality of that, right? And so they benefit from that too, Now, of course, the
yeah,
converse is true too. If you do something really bad, then it might affect the way I look at your employer too. So I think in a weird way, they kind of get the benefit of that, even though they don't have any
yeah,
reason to get the benefit
yeah,
of that.
yeah. Good, good. I'll keep that one in mind.
Yeah. So tell them that. We got a couple people here. This is interesting. People are weighing in on this. I think we sparked something. This actually could be a show here in and of itself here. Aaron says, I feel like reputation trumps personal brand. At some point, you can't control how people feel about you, no matter how good you try to look. How about just be great and the personal branding will take care of itself? Hmm.
I think that's a great point, and I do think there are some of us. I am so impressed with. I'm the old man in mobility now. Been around for too long probably, and I just never cease to be amazed by the young talent that's in our industry now. But then I also wonder, the young talent I know is because they're out. They're either at conferences or they're on LinkedIn. There must be so many other people who aren't putting themselves out there that I don't know anything about. So yeah, I
And
think
are
it's
there companies suffering from that because you don't know who they are
mm,
personally, and therefore you're not aware of the company too, right?
yeah, yeah,
Very
yeah.
interesting. Christina says perception is important. There's more to personal branding than just being on social. What are you doing to look good in all aspects? Interesting. Um, Richard's saying he's thinking about the sports clubs. Some players are bigger than the clubs. For example, Beckham, Messi. Yeah, totally. And as soon as that player goes to that club, right? I mean, when Ronaldo goes to Juventus, all of a sudden Juventus is worth more with
They're selling
Ronaldo,
a lot more shirts for sure.
for sure. Christina, Aaron Venable, I agree. It's so important to have a good reputation, but you need to make sure that's reflecting what you've post, share, like knowing your own personal brand statement. Christina is saying employer's brand is important to get paid. But if you have a passion project that takes flight, you got to chase that. Ideally, you would be working for a company that supports the same mission, goals, and passions. Jason says, do what you say you're going to do, and do it right the first time. Being reputable and having integrity matters. I think that's what Jason's saying. He
Totally
wants his
right.
brand to be.
That's
You
the
know, I
absolutely core. No matter what you're putting out on social media platforms, if you don't have that, you might as well just stay home.
Well, and I think the person you put out in social should be the same person as in real life. And I think that's probably one of the things that I worry about, right? I want to make sure that I'm the same person in real life that I am, on LinkedIn, because,
yeah.
So.
And you are, to your credit.
I thank you. I hope so. None of us is perfect, right? And I think as long as we say that publicly, you can't call me out on it privately, because I'm just like, listen, I try to be good. I don't know. But this is really awesome conversation. I could talk about this for another hour. I think we have to have a conversation about this. But Andrew, I just want to thank you for being here. Everybody hit that like button if you've enjoyed this conversation with Andrew. And if you haven't enjoyed it, hit that like button, please. And thank you so much. Andrew, you've given us a lot to think about here. And Felicia's checking in as well. You've given us a lot to think about, but I want to ask you if you can leave people with just maybe one thought or just remind us of something. What would that be, Andrew?
It's the thing sorry, I always use too many words. Here's the words getting in the way again. Let's just say this: be brave. That's what my parting shot is.
Brave.
Be brave. Don't ask for permission. Don't wait for somebody else to tell you it's okay. Just do it. If you have a good idea, follow it.
I love that.
Don't look back. Yeah.
Be brave, because you can't, if you don't be brave, you can't be good, right? You can't do good things. You can't be exceptional unless you have the courage. That's fantastic. I love that, Andrew. And then, hey, I want to let everybody know tomorrow, Adam, I'm looking at you. Tomorrow, tell me if I'm lying. Tomorrow we have a 1 hour later start time, correct? We're starting at 4 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Eastern. For those of you on the train, you want to tune in. We're starting at 5 o'clock Eastern, because we're going to be live from the NTRP happy hour at Lava Cantina. We're shaking things up, Andrew. We're being brave out here.
Yeah, good. Lots of bravery in that.
Yeah, a little tequila goes a long way in the bravery department. But no, we're going to show you guys to take you inside the NTRP networking happy hour and meet some of the folks on the board there here in Dallas. Dallas is cooking up some really great things. Andrew, thank you so much for being here, and everybody go out there and support Elevate to Even Plus, or 11 Plus, as we like to say in shorthand. I think it's a great organization, and Upward Mobility as well. So get in touch with Andrew if you got questions about that. And I look forward to also supporting Andrew.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for having me back on again. This was a lot of fun. It went fast.
Yeah, for sure. Take care, everybody. We will see you tomorrow.